Hello, my name is Aaron James, coming from you from Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. And today I'm going to talk about outsourcing and what it is, why companies do it, the pros and cons, and some instances where outsourcing went wrong. All right, so let's get into this. All right. So what is outsourcing? The definition of outsourcing is the use of a global supply chain, which is number one. Number two, using outside vendors to complete a task, or others may say contracting out the work. Number three, international business practices. Okay, so as you see below number three, I have an iPhone 10. Okay, I have that there because I love to use Apple as an example of a global supply chain product. Apple utilizes outsourcing to create their products. And to the right here, I have a little diagram of a supply chain. Okay, so let's say this headquarters is Apple. Okay, and they have an outsourcing partner in China, which they actually do. The phone is designed in California. The parts, the insides, the guts are built in China. Okay, so this would be like China. Okay, who they outsource to their suppliers for like the screens, the camera, the hard drive inside the phones, the RAM, the LED screen, OLED screen, which they actually, I think they use LG. Actually, the screen on the iPhone 10 is an LG OLED screen, actually. So they partnered with LG on that. But anyway, you see that it rotates, it comes back to the headquarters, and it does it again many other times, and eventually it makes its way to the customer, and this looks like a little picture of a big box store, like a Best Buy or something like that, okay? So that's what a supply chain is, okay? So I'm going to read this little paragraph here just to kind of go into it more. Outsourcing, also sometimes referred to as contracting out, is a business practice used by companies to reduce cost or improve efficiency by shifting tasks, operations, jobs, or processes to an external contracted third party for a significant period of time. The functions that are contracted out can be performed by the third party either on-site or off-site of the business. Okay. Next. The advantages or disadvantages of outsourcing. So we're going to talk about the pros first. There's financial benefits. Basically, companies make more money, okay? And they can keep the cost down of the product by outsourcing things along the way to finishing the product. So there's financial benefits. International business relationships are also formed by doing that. International commerce, which is also a really good thing. Global supply chains are utilized. Concentration on the core process of the company rather than the supporting ones. So it allows a company to focus on the core of its company and then allow the other vendors to just be the support on the outside, so to speak. There's risk sharing involved, which allows a company to shift its certain responsibilities to the outsourced vendor. There's cost savings, which I've already mentioned. And overall, the theory is that overall better quality of product. Okay. Now the cons also could be quality problems, which I will talk about in a little bit. What happened with Samsung with the Galaxy Note 7 in 2016. There was a little foobar with that phone. Then there's a reliance on other countries. Now you're relying on another country to finish the production of your product, instead of it being that made in the USA. You know, when you outsource a product outside of the United States, you no longer can have that stamp of approval, that made in the USA stamp on a product. And that may be bothersome to some customers. Loss of control, which I will talk about in a little bit with the Samsung phone. Security and confidentiality issues. So I'm kind of a techie, so I keep a close eye on Apple products. And this iPhone 10 that I showed you in the previous slide, there are already leaks and pictures and blueprints of the phone that leaked out before the product was even finished last year. So that can be a problem that can happen with outsourcing. And below I have a little picture of the most commonly used business models outsourced. IT is one of them. We all know that whenever we purchase a product, electronic product, and we need technical support, usually we're talking to someone in India or Bangladesh. So we all know that. Legal outsourcing is something that happens. Content development, a lot of times, video games, the graphics are done in India because it cuts down cost for a company. Web designs are done overseas a lot of times. It saves companies money to just have them done offshore that overseas. Recruitment, logistics are usually done. A lot of manufacturing is done overseas. And we already know customer support, a lot of that is done overseas. Anytime we call for customer support, we know when we hear a different accent, it's usually not somewhere in the United States. So, I don't mean that in a bad way, it's just the truth. Next. So, here's Tim Cook, CEO of Apple. I'm bringing him up because, like I said, I'm really privy to Apple products, and they're the perfect company to, in my opinion, to talk about this. Even though in the beginning slide, if you notice, I did have Ford on there because Ford has been known to outsource parts of their vehicles to be built in Mexico. I have Carrier on the front cover. I should have mentioned that earlier. Carrier is a air conditioning company. A lot of the condensers and evaporators are built in Egypt, Mexico, and I can't remember the other country that builds parts for Carrier. And I think President Trump swore to bring Carrier back to the United States from Mexico too. But anyway, Tim Cook realized that producing an abundance of product does Apple a disservice in their ever-changing company. Tim Cook also took over the company after Steve Jobs' death. His mission was to streamline the supply chain of Apple. Some of the ways he achieved this was by cutting down on waste spending of warehouses with one central warehouse in California, and that is number one. Number two, he outsourced manufacturing. And number three, he reduced the number of suppliers in the manufacturing. So even within the outsourcing chain, he cut down the amount of feelers that were involved with the production of the Apple products because there was too many hands that were on it. Number four, he synchronized the data between the warehouses and the customer stores. Number five, he focused on making groundbreaking products and innovating. That's what I was talking about when I talked about the concentration on the core process of the company rather than the supporting ones. Because by outsourcing, he was able to focus on groundbreaking products and innovation. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Galaxy Note blunder that happened in 2016. This is an example of a foobar. Okay, of outsourcing foobar. In 2016, Samsung Galaxy Note 7 had a problem with their phone batteries catching on fire. There's problems with the Samsung's outsourcing supply chain, poor quality of design of the batteries. What happened is the positive and negative ions within the lithium-ion battery came in contact with each other because they were too squeezed, too tightly packed in there to the frame of the phone. So a part of the area of the phone where trying to make it so you can see me, where the phone curves at the top, the battery area was right in there and it pressed down too much, squeezing the battery, and the ions, positive and negative, contacted each other. And it caused a fire in the phone, like an explosion in the phone because of that. Rush production of the phone to keep up with Apple's iPhone caused this. That's what ended up happening. So as you see there, that's the perfect example of when a supply chain through outsourcing goes wrong. Okay. So in conclusion, I talked about the pros and cons of outsourcing. I talked about what outsourcing actually is. I talked about the pros and cons. Like I said, I gave an example of a company that utilizes that. I gave an example of a company that utilized it and failed miserably. And so I just want to leave you with these closing thoughts of, you know, how do you feel outsourcing? How do you feel outsourcing benefits our country as a whole? Do you feel it benefits our country as far as the big corporate businesses that utilize that as a way to cut down costs and save the consumer money? Or are you the type of individual who just feels pro USA, everything should be built in USA, no matter if it causes the product to cost um, extreme amounts of money? How do you feel about that? And so I'll leave you with that, and I pray you have a blessed day. Thank you for listening to me.